Is it possible that the heaviness of this past year has really shut down our ability to see all the good that God is doing in our lives and the lives around us? And this Thanksgiving weekend, we're gonna join Joseph again as he reviews just how good God has been to him, even despite all his hardships. And we're gonna learn a pattern for praise that fosters greater strength, greater joy, and greater anticipation for all that God has yet to do. And it's coming up right now. What is up, everyone? It's Pastor Mackenzie Carter, and I want to say happy Thanksgiving weekend to everyone who's part of the Fierce family. Whether you're physically here at the building at Fierce, attending a house church, or you're tuning in online, we love it that you are here, and we wouldn't want to do this thing without you. We want to put the passion back in your weekend. If you're brand new, we believe in impassioned Bible teaching, modern worship, and engaging stuff for kids. If you get value out of today's message, don't forget that you can share it throughout the week with your friends from our website or our YouTube page or the Fierce app. Inviting other people to experience Fierce with you online or in person is a great way to spread Jesus' love during the Christmas season. So don't hold back on those invitations, because that is how the Fierce fire spreads. Before we get going, let's check in with Elena for anything we need to know.
What's up, Fierce Church? My name is Elena, and you've picked an awesome week to check out Fierce Online. We have an awesome experience put together just for you. Before we dive in, let's take a second right now and get to know each other. Since this past Thursday was Thanksgiving, we want to know, what are you most thankful for this year? I know that 2020 has thrown a lot of curveballs, and we've been through some really hard things. But there's always something we can be grateful for. Let us know what you're thankful for in the comments below. While we're doing that, I want to let you know, if this is your first time joining us, welcome! I know it's a big deal to try something new. So we're glad that you're taking time out of your busy schedule and hanging out with us today. We'd love to connect, so pull out your phone and open up the new tab. Go to fierce.church/new and let us know a little bit about yourself. We'll reach out to you about how you can best get involved here at Fierce. We're gonna head into our first worship song in just a minute. But before that, we've got an amazing Christmas opportunity that you can sign up to be a part of. This December, you can sign up to take what we're calling a bag of love and give it to a local first responder, medical worker, or a teacher. In addition to a card expressing our appreciation for their service, each bag also contains a Starbucks gift card, hot cocoa mix, and a fun Fierce tumbler. We want to be a blessing to our community, to those who are fighting the effects of COVID-19 firsthand. So you can sign up to reserve a bag of love at our website, fierce.church/love. You can pick up your reserved bags in the lobby at Fierce on either Sunday, December 6th or just Sunday, December 13th, which will give you plenty of time to deliver it before Christmas. All right, guys, it's time for worship. Let's jump in.
Let praise be a weapon that silences the enemy. Let praise be a weapon that conquers all anxiety. Let it rise. Let faith arise. We sing your name in the dark and it changes everything. We sing with all we are and we claim your victory. Let it rise. Let praise arise. Let it rise. We'll see you break down every wall. We'll watch the giants fall. 'Cause fear cannot survive when we praise you. The God of breakthroughs on our side. Forever lift him high. With all creation cry, God, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh, let faith be a song that overcomes the raging sea. Let faith be a song that calms the storm inside of me. Let it rise. Let faith arise. Let it rise. We'll see you break down every wall. We'll watch the giants fall. 'Cause fear cannot survive when we praise you. The God of breakthroughs on our side. Forever lift him high. With all creation cry, God, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh, this is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you, we praise you. This is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you, we praise you. This is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you, we praise you. And this is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you, we praise. We'll see you break down every wall. We'll watch the giants fall. Fear cannot survive when we praise you. The God of breakthroughs on our side. Forever lift him high. With all creation cry, God, we praise you. We'll see you break down every wall. We'll watch the giants fall. creation cry, God, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh, we praise you, Lord. You worthy, Lord. Yeah. You worthy. Oh, Jesus. You're beautiful. You're worthy, Lord. I can't hold back my praise. I gotta let it out. I can't hold back my praise. I gotta let it out. I can't hold back my praise. I gotta let it out. I can't hold back my praise. I gotta let it out. I can't hold back my praise. I gotta let it out. I can't hold back my praise. I gotta let it out. I can't hold back my praise. I gotta let it out. I can't hold back my praise. I gotta let it out. I can't hold back my praise. I gotta let it out. I can't hold back my praise. Oh, this is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise. This is what living looks like. This is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you. We're gonna see you break. We'll see you break down every wall. We'll watch the giants fall. Fear cannot survive when we praise you. The God of breakthroughs on our side, forever lifting high. With all creation cry, God, we praise you. Oh,
Before we head into our next song, let's take a moment and receive offering together. If you're prepared to give right now, you can give by going to our website, fierce.church/give. You can also give by using our app, or you can text to give at Fierce Give and the amount to 74483. While we're talking about generosity, I want to remind each of you that we have our Reach and Rescue Christmas offering in full swing. We do a special Christmas offering each year that runs until the end of January. This year, we're focusing our efforts on 3 main areas: our community, our church, and our global call. We've set a modest goal this year to support COVID relief efforts in our local community, help strengthen our church's budget for 2021, and rescue those trapped in sex trafficking throughout Thailand. To get more details about any of those areas I just mentioned, you can visit fierce.church/reach-rescue. Now it's time to head back into our worship.
I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. A man's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. Then you came along and put me back together. Every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing and I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley, and there's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who cares. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who cares. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who cares. You're the only one who cares. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who cares. You turn graves into gardens.
We've got a special message for you guys this weekend from Pastor Mackenzie. I can't wait to hear what God has to say to us today. Kenzie, over to you.
Thankfulness has the power to change everything, even when nothing else is changing around us. Especially in years like 2020, when everything has been so difficult, it can almost seem like it's hard to find things to be thankful for. So much has been taken away from us. So much that was normal and expected is now difficult or not there at all. But this is a trap. In fact, we need to practice thankfulness even more now, possibly than we have ever before. This is important because Thanksgiving helps us to see more of what God is doing, what is going right, which gives us strength and perseverance to make it through hard times. Since we all need more strength and joy right now, we must decide to deliberately review places God is extravagantly loving us with his gifts. Most of us don't take time to appreciate God's gifts with any kind of regularity. And this dramatically decreases our joy, makes us weaker, and even makes us just straight up underappreciated kids. Our preoccupation with the difficulties and unfair situations of life blind us to the huge personal gifts God is blessing us with constantly. And these are the very things that would give us strength, joy, and godly anticipation. In our house at Christmas time, we have a tradition that you have to open up one Christmas present at a time, so everyone can look at what was received and take a minute to appreciate it. You may do it differently in your house, but that's how we do it in the Carter home. Otherwise, no one really takes the time to appreciate what it is they've been given in a public way. Today, I want to give you 7 areas that we can review daily, weekly, or whenever that will provoke genuine thankfulness. This will really help those of us who tend to get more melancholy in the winter. So we've been in a series called Meant It for Good. And when we last were with Joseph, he had just been promoted to be the second in command of the entire nation of Egypt. But I want you to think about the humility that has brought Joseph to this point. When he was younger, he was very favored by his dad. He probably thought, hey, if dad thinks I'm special, I must be pretty special. God had big plans for him, but unexpectedly, he was sold into slavery by his brothers, betrayed by his employer, and then forgotten by the world. Yet even when he was in the dungeon, he was still pointing to God. He still had a great attitude, and he was still serving others and being faithful for 13 years, even though horrible things had happened to him. Think about his time in that dungeon. Joseph must have thought there is no natural way to have anything in this life, a wife, kids, anything like success. Suddenly, he's pulled from the dungeon, given a bath, and then brought in before the king to prophetically explain Pharaoh's dream. A member of Pharaoh's staff had been testifying about Joseph's ability to explain dreams by God's power through him. So Joseph tells Pharaoh, there will be 7 years of overabundance coming before 7 years of horrible famine. Operating in the organizational wisdom he had been practicing his whole life, Joseph suggests saving a percentage of the crops during the abundance so that there will still be plenty to go around during the famine. Now, here's a spoiler alert. This is going to go really well for Joseph. Pharaoh is so blown away by Joseph's suggestion and possibly so exasperated with the other staff who aren't any help that he offers Joseph the role of running the whole program and being second in command of the entire nation. Before it's all over, Joseph has 2 kids and is reflecting on how God has consoled him despite all of his hardship, and he uses the phrase, God has made me. That's what we want to look at in our own lives. God has. God has done so much for us. So let's review some of the same areas that we see in Joseph's life in this passage. Genesis 41:51-52 says, Joseph named his older son Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget all my troubles and everyone in my father's family. In verse 52, it says, Joseph named his second son Ephraim, for he said, God has made me fruitful in this land of my grief. So number one, God has given me favor. Genesis 41:37-57. Joseph's suggestions were well received by Pharaoh and his officials. So Pharaoh asked his officials, can we find anyone else like this man so obviously filled with the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has revealed the meaning of the dreams to you clearly, no one else is as intelligent and wise as you are. You will be in charge of my court, and all my people will take orders from you. Only I, sitting on my throne, will have a rank higher than yours. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his hand and placed it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in fine linen clothing and hung a gold chain around his neck. And then he had Joseph ride in a chariot reserved for his second in command. And wherever Joseph went, the command was shouted, kneel down. So Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of all Egypt. And Pharaoh said to him, I am Pharaoh, but no one will lift a hand or foot in the entire land of Egypt without your approval. So Joseph took charge of the entire land of Egypt. When you have favor, you have more than you should based upon the goodwill of the one giving it. Earlier this year, out of the blue, I received a text from a new friend that just read, do you want to go with me to Kenya? Yeah. Not only was it this trip of a lifetime where I got to meet incredible people, witness the love of God in a whole new way, and see animals that I love in the wild, it was completely free to me, a total surprise, and it ended up changing me and my life trajectory. It was favor from the Lord. What about you? Do you know that you have favor every time you don't have to wait in a long line? At work, you may have a position you wouldn't say you were entirely qualified for, but you've got it. You're invited into meetings of great consequence. Do you know that when prices are lower than you expected at the store, that is favor? I love that favor. Favor also includes access and authority. For Joseph, he was given overwhelming power, authority, and access by a world ruler who has known him for less than an hour. For Joseph, this meant that he had direct access to Pharaoh and he had access to his signet ring. Placing his signet ring on Joseph's finger was like giving him his signature. Whatever Joseph says will be done, will be done. He had access to everything Pharaoh had access to. Now, not everyone has authority over many others, but you do have self-governance. Unlike so much of history, you are free to do what you decide. So what stuff is available just to you, for free, or just because someone else is paying for it? For the most part, like all of our social media is free. The internet, parks, lots of food choices, hundreds of stores within driving distance. Each of us has access to restaurants, or we did, where we'll eat better than kings and queens just a few centuries ago. Favor is overly generous treatment or responsiveness that wasn't earned beforehand. Favored people realize people think more of me than maybe they should. I think we could all agree that if God displayed everything that runs through our minds on a giant movie screen for all to see, they would rightly think a lot less of us. The truth is that people shouldn't think as highly of us as they do. This is a secret that Joseph had been learning. There is a spiritual connection between humility and favor. And Joseph had humility, and it attracted the favor of God, which promoted him to this place. That's why God says he withdraws from the proud and he gives grace to the humble. You know when you're growing in humility, when you feel entitled to less and less, when you're convinced about what you don't deserve than what you do. So let's let the scripture speak to our hearts that humility is a shortcut to all the places you really want to go. Okay, so in the chat or in your house church, name some areas where you have been given favor that you need to praise God for. number 1 is God has given me favor. Number 2, God has given me relationships. Now in verse 45, it says, Then Pharaoh gave Joseph a new Egyptian name, Zaphanath-Paneah. He also gave him a wife, whose name was Asenath. She was the daughter of Potiphar, the priest of On. During this time, before the first of the famine years, 2 sons were born to Joseph and his wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, the priest of On. God has given you relationships that make your life better. For Joseph, this was his new wife and his kids. A few years earlier, at the bottom of the dungeon, he could not have imagined that he would have a wife and kids. Now, he didn't have every possible kind of relationship, and not every relationship was necessarily problem-free. Remember, he still had some real problems with his brothers. But he had a few relationships that reminded him that God was consoling him for the hurt he'd experienced. I noticed Joseph's humility again. Do you? It would be so easy to think that he was a self-made man. But Joseph had been trained by the trials of life now. He knows that he is not in all that in a bag of chips. It was God alone who rescued him. Here he gives God the glory for the relationships he'll hold dearest. Y'all, do you know how amazing our church is? So many people have been going through lately, whether it is COVID or loss or just really, really difficult circumstances. And our church body has rallied. We have brought food, we have written letters, we have encouraged one another and prayed for one another, and we have just been there when each other has needed one another. And that is relational favor. What about you? Who are the family connections you have, the grandparents? Who are the small group friends? Who are the 1 or 2 coworkers God has surrounded you with that are kind to you, that offer you good counsel, that are a consolation for the friends that weren't so good? Maybe you have a spouse that doesn't do everything right, but does like 90% of everything right. Are you failing to see the gift God has given you in them? Even social media connections can still be meaningful. There are many people who don't get you. But if you have a single person that tends to understand your heart, that is a personal gift from God. Do you have any partnerships that make you more effective? That is from God. Do you have any dear confidants? Those are from God. Do you have any social media connections that provide any type of joy to you? That is from God. God has given you those things. Who has blessed your life? Thank God for them. So number 1, God has given me favor. Number 2, God has given me relationships. And number 3, God has given me access to wisdom. In verse 46, it says, he was 30 years old when he began serving in the court of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. I think it's interesting that God points out that he wasn't serving alone. There were people around Joseph who would provide other forms of wisdom. He didn't know all the culture of Egypt. He didn't know what it was like to serve in the national cabinet. He needed people around him who could help them understand the nuances of Egyptian culture. The humble seek out wisdom because they know that expertise in one area counts for very little in another. I am so grateful for the people in my life that have spoken into me, spent time with me, and offered wisdom where it counted most. People like Beth Holmes, while I was in college, that invited me into her home and was such an example of a wife and a mother. People like Heather Manahan and Ann Smith, who I sat in their homes with as I considered the wisdom of homeschooling for the first time. People like Tammy Chapman, who was always such a source of wisdom to me as a pastor's wife and as a leader. Okay, so what about you? It could be wise people who offer good counsel. They don't just tell you what you want to hear, but they tell you wisdom. Just think about all the information we have access to, books and podcasts and sermons, YouTube videos, cookbooks, software, information. Did you get to go to school or college or get a higher education degree? Any of these are God's favor towards you. Have you gotten to take advantage of any on-the-job training? Do you have any knowledge of history that makes you realize how far the human race has come over the past 1,500 years? If you own a Bible, the most important knowledge you could ever own, God has given you tremendous access to wisdom to help you succeed. So why should we be thankful in this season? Number 1, God has given me favor. Number 2, God has given me relationships. Number 3, God has given me access to wisdom. And number 4, God has given me abundance. 46b says, and when Joseph left Pharaoh's presence, he inspected the entire land of Egypt. As predicted, for 7 years, the land produced bumper crops. During those years, Joseph gathered all the crops grown in Egypt and stored the grain from the surrounding fields in the cities. He piled up huge amounts of grain like sand on the seashore. Finally, he stopped keeping records because there was too much to measure. Y'all, he stopped keeping records because there was too much to measure. Abundance means there are multiple areas of life where God has given you more than you need. There may be others who have more than you, but you don't even need all that you have. Of course, Joseph isn't going to eat all this food himself, but he is in charge of who will. Many of us have so much that we could easily give away and not miss anything. I don't know if you know this or not, but Mark's assistant, Melissa Lavalarte, is the absolute best. She's amazing. So many times this year, I had a question or a wall I ran into with tech or a website, and Melissa always fixed it with a smile, making me feel like it was a joy to help me. She lifted so much burden for me through what are probably little things for her, and I felt so abundantly blessed by her this year. What about you? Where do you have more than you need? If truth were told, do you have more clothes than you need? Do you have things in your cupboards that have been there for over 2 months? Do you have so many shoes that they clutter up closets? Do you have at least one car? And for those of us who have a garage, we are so abundantly blessed that even our cars have houses. What about an abundance of love? Is there laughter in your home? Do you have people in your life who would be willing to pray with you? Do you have more Bibles than you actually read? Do you have subscriptions to things like Netflix that give you more movies than you could ever watch in your lifetime? Do you have any family members who love you? Do you have people that graciously put up with your sinful nature? Do you have a church family that loves you? The answer to that last question is yes. God's abundance also includes all the beauty, adventure, and fun that God allows into your lives. Verse 46 said he inspected the entire land of Egypt. Can you imagine what it was like for Joseph, who had been a prisoner for 13 years, to go and inspect the land that he was now in charge of? Can you imagine how beautiful the sky and the pyramids and the vegetation looked to Joseph, who had seen nothing but rats and mud for so long? Oftentimes, when God withholds something in one season, it's so it can be all the more beautiful in another season. There were times when Mark and I didn't have much. We've lived in places with so little green. We've had times where we could barely see the sky out of our apartment window. It made the times we finally had much better. Do you get to see the sky as you drive to work? Do you even have a plot of ground for a yard? Do you have bicycles and somewhere to ride them? Do you have any nature around you at all? Do you play games with family and friends on some evenings? All of this is part of God's abundant beauty that God has surrounded you with. Now, in the chat or in your house church, with regards to relationships, wisdom, or abundance, which of these do you tend to underappreciate? increase your joy and strength this weekend? Number 1, God has given me favor. Number 2, God has given me relationships. Number 3, God has given me access to wisdom. Number 4, God has given me abundance. And now number 5, God has given me successful plans. Now, verse 53 says, at last, the 7 years of bumper crops throughout the land of Egypt came to an end. And then the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had predicted. The famine also struck all the surrounding countries, but throughout Egypt, there was plenty of food. Successful plans means something has worked. Well, we all know what it's like to try something and have it not work. But God has also given us plans that actually do work. For Joseph, his plans of collecting grain for Egypt absolutely worked. It was like God who gave him the wisdom and likely directed a lot of the details in order for this to work. It may be important to understand that it's not that everything we try works, or that even that everything works amazingly, but that God is causing some of the things we try to work. Just over a year ago, we made the big decision to sell our dream house. And the reason why we did this is because all of our money was going to taxes, and we wanted to have more money to give and for college. And it worked. We sold it, we moved, and that was God. What about you? Maybe you had some really thoroughly researched plans that ended up working. Maybe there were a couple of long shots and risks you took, but it still ended up working. You may have just been guessing, and it still worked. That's because God has given you successful plans. Your small business, it's not $1 million per year business, but it's working. And you might not be a trillionaire, but many of your plans are still working. You're not going under. Your TV isn't perfect, but it's working. Your car isn't perfect, but it's working. Your appliances aren't perfect, and they're not top of the line, but they still work. You may not have all your teeth, but the 3 you have work very well. You just keep smiling, sugar. And here is number 6. God has allowed me to go through trial. Now let's back up to verse 52 because I want you to see this. Verse 52 says, God has made me fruitful in this land of my grief. Where did God give all of this to Joseph? It was in the land of his suffering. Joseph's trials were largely caused by the sin of others. God is not the author of sin, and he does not cause people to sin against us, but he will use others' sin to further his agenda in our lives. But it was the trials that kept Joseph humble. It was the trials that kept him moldable in God's hands. It was the trials that kept him from becoming haughty and rigid and into his own agenda. They made him appreciate more. Joseph's plan didn't work. Whatever they were when he was 17 on Jacob's farm, and now all these years later, Joseph is able to thank God despite the plans of man that didn't work. The suffering is part of the story. Things withheld in one stage make acquiring them all the more wonderful, and it reminds us of the gift that it was not of ourselves. Sometimes we see what God allowed as a mugger instead of a doctor. A mugger wants to hurt you because his intention is to weaken you and take from you. But a doctor will cut you, but it is so she can strengthen you and give you more health than you have had. Joseph was able to see God as a doctor and not a mugger. The intent of your suffering was to heal you. Now here comes maybe the best news. Are you ready? For those who have had the courage to trust Jesus to forgive their sin and make him their king and throw in with him and say, as for me, I'm going to follow Jesus, these will have more and more blessing to look forward to. So the final category to evaluate God's blessings in your life is finally number 7. All that Christ has done, is doing, and will do in me. 1 Peter 1:3-4 says, all praise to God. All praise to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. It is by his great mercy that we have been born again, because God raised Jesus Christ from the dead. Now we live with great expectation, and we have a priceless inheritance, an inheritance that is kept in heaven for you, pure and undefiled, beyond the reach of change and decay. By his great mercy. Because God raised Jesus Christ from the dead, the reason you have God's favor, wisdom, success, beauty, access is because Jesus has taken the curse upon himself to give you the blessing. Now, here is something that I hope somebody shouts about, y'all. For those who trust in Jesus, as you enter into the gates of heaven, all of those blessings will only increase more and more, except for the trials, which will be a thing you only remember, but never experience again. So we've been doing this exercise at home with the kids. We all meet up in our bedroom before we go to bed, and we write down 3 things we're thankful to God for about that day, and then we say them out loud. We've been doing it for about a month every day. The thing that is sticking out to me about this discipline is how our joy levels have been increasing. I love how we're seeing God's faithfulness more and more, and how we have this fresh perspective and are celebrating one another's blessings. Thankfulness has the power to change everything, even though nothing around us is changing. Our God deserves to be thanked and praised for the incredible works of grace that he is doing toward us every day. I want to pray for you and I that the coming year will be marked by a gratitude that our church has never experienced before. And I believe that means it will also be marked by a joy and celebration and anticipation of all that God is going to do like we've never seen before. So would you pray with me? Jesus, God, we just praise you right now. Even though we are in the midst of this season, God, we trust you. You are faithful, God. God, we want to thank you right now for all of the favor and the relationships and the wisdom and the access and the beauty and the things around us that you have surrounded us with, God. You have been so good to us. God, I pray that as we discipline ourselves to be thankful over and over again, that you would change our perspective, that you would increase our joy, that you would open our eyes to see what you are doing in the earth around us. God, we love you. We lift our hands and praise you, and we trust you in this time. We give you thanksgiving, God, for you are good. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
It's time to wrap up our service today. Thank you so much for joining us here at Fierce Online. Here's a quick reminder that our walk with God isn't limited to one church experience a week. We want to come alongside each of you and help you take your next steps towards Jesus each and every day. So we put together a special page on our website specifically geared towards helping you grow in your spiritual walk. Visit fierce.church/growth. We've categorized a ton of resources for you on topics like marriage and parenting, anxiety, depression, and finances. Make sure you check out that page today. Also, if you're facing challenging circumstances right now and need support of the church, send us an email at help@fierce.church. Guys, we weren't meant to do life alone. Make sure you reach out, and someone from our care and prayer team will reach out to you right away. All right, friends, that's all for today. Can't wait to see you all next weekend. See you later.